This is Standard Office Procedures, the podcast that helps professionals live and grow through culture, communication, and candor. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Standard Office Procedures. It's me, Grace.
Hey, Grace.
I'm your host, Grace, and here with me as always is Shannon. Say hi, Shannon.
Hey.
And today we're talking about something a little bit different. We've done some pretty heavy topics lately that were like longer episodes. And so we decided to break it up and do something a little bit lighter, a little bit more like bite-sized. And we're going to talk about common business acronyms.
Ooh.
Isn't that fun?
I hate acronyms.
I hate acronyms too. And I also feel like when I started my career, like properly, when I was working in a bank, when I was like 22 or 23, there were a lot of things that I was like, what? I don't know what that means. Like SOW or EOD or all these things that now, and you know, I and most people who have been in the workforce for like a year or so, these things are just part of your lexicon. Like you just say them without even thinking, or you mostly type them in emails. If you speak in acronyms, I can't help you. But anyway, a lot of these things you think that people know what they mean. And there might be a lot of assumptions if you're newer to the workforce or you started a new job at a new industry. You might be hearing a lot of terms that everyone else just seems to know. And you're like, what does that mean? So we're not going to get super granular here, but we are going to go over some of the more common ones just from like a general like personnel and people and business standpoint. And then we'll go into some specific departments.
Yeah.
Does that
we
sound
actually
like fun?
had a come to Jesus at our office about acronyms because we were a fledgling startup and there weren't many of us here. And we started making up acronyms for things that shouldn't have been
didn't need acronyms.
They didn't need acronyms or they were just there just to stand for something that was like nobody else knows what you're talking about.
Or like the actual thing had an acronym already, but we made like a special Blue Summit Supplies acronym.
So silly. So
I say we, but it's Owen.
It's Owen, guys. It was Owen. But, you know, we talked about it, and especially when we started growing our IT department and people just started adding more and more to different processes we had come up with, and it started to get a little out of hand. So we actually have kind of an informal policy here that's like, you will not make up any more acronyms.
And like kind of be cognizant. I think this is a good point before we kind of dive into it is like, dude, acronyms can be so annoying when they're unnecessary. And if you work in a industry or a department that has like a lot of department-specific acronyms, like for example, Shannon and I, when we were marketing together, there are a lot of acronyms that you and I use a lot, right? Like CRM or SEO and things like that, that marketing people, like those things that I just said, you're like, yeah, obviously I know what that means. Everybody knows what that means. But then I would get in meetings with like salespeople and I would be talking to Shannon about our SEO. And Blair, one of our sales guys, was like, what is that? And I was like, I felt like a real jerk because unknowingly I had been kind of cutting him out of the conversation, like excluding him because he didn't know what SEO stood for through no fault of his own, because why would he know that? You know, he's not in marketing, he's in sales. So be cognizant when you're using them as well. Like if you're listening to people use acronyms and you're kind of like, I am lost, know that when you start learning them and using them, remember how you felt then and try to cater your conversation to the people listening.
I think it kind of goes on both sides. Like if you're sitting in a room and somebody's using acronyms, be willing to look dumb.
Yes.
You know, because you probably don't look dumb actually. Yeah. You actually look pretty smart if you say, I'm sorry, what does that mean? Because it shows that you're paying attention and you're trying to learn. But also be cognizant if you're in the room with somebody who maybe has less experience than you, or is we're in a different department and you're using acronyms. I have tried to learn, and I got this from Grace, actually. I learned it from her, to stop myself and say, okay, and well, we were discussing doing this blog post because of the SEO power or whatever. Actually, SEO means search engine optimization.
Yeah.
It means Google is our best friend. And then go back to what I was saying. That is really good. So it's on the person speaking as well as the person listening. I feel like. I think
heading off questions, because I think what you said is so important about people asking questions. Like, again, I want to reemphasize that if you ask a question, it's not going to make you look dumb. I mean, unless you have like a jerk boss or something, it's not going to make you look dumb. It's going to make you look engaged and like you're trying to learn, which is such a valuable way to be. But otherwise, like just stay ahead of it and try to explain as you speak.
Honestly, I think sometimes people get into the trap of using lots of acronyms because they think it makes them look smart. And they also know that most people aren't going to ask the question, and it's their way of subtly pushing you down and keeping control over you. And if you're willing to say, what does that mean? And actually, I've seen this happen. It catches them off guard. And what's really funny is when it's a made up acronym and you go, I'm sorry, what does that mean? And they're like, you know, I don't really know. Yes. And I'm like, well, if you don't know, how am I supposed to know?
It's very gratifying.
I love it so much.
So, all right. So let's, without further ado, let's talk about acronyms. So we're going to start off with some pretty common ones and go down the line. So Shannon, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. Explain this to me.
That means quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, and that is the year divided up into quarters. So these are 3-month periods of time. So Q1, January, February, March, Q2, April, May, June, and so on. So a lot of times people talk about, we're going to do this in Q1, or our Q2 numbers are looking really good, or Q4, man, we're going to come back in the black. They're talking about the financial reports of those particular quarters of the year. It's just a smaller way of looking at a year instead of in the whole year, but longer than a month.
Yep. I think of this often too in terms of deadlines. Like, well, this project needs to be finished by the end of Q3, right? And I say this a lot. You say this a lot. We use these a lot. I think most businesses will kind of split the year up into quarters. So this is a pretty common one. I remember when I was a little kid, I did not know what it meant, and I heard it on TV or something. And so when I was playing business, I would say like, give me as many Qs as you can. I want 5 Q3s, and that's not a thing. So don't do it like that. But this is a pretty common one no matter where you work or what industry you work in. Similarly, EOD is end of day. So if somebody emails you something and they say, I need this by EOD, they're saying I need this by the end of the day. So, generally 5 p.m., 4:30, 6, whatever. But they're saying, hey, give me this by the end of the business day. And in that same vein, you've got EOB and COB, Shannon.
End of business, close of business. It's the same thing. It just means by 5 p.m.
Yep, 5 p.m., have it done. Then YTD, MTD. Also, saying these out loud is weird because I only ever see them written.
Some of these you really only see written. Yeah. Like you don't say MOM. You say month over month.
Yeah. And I've never said, give this to me by EOD. If I'm talking, I'd say, can I have this by the end of the day?
Right. It's so odd. So
I would say, remember, usage-wise, these are more commonly typed out in emails.
I feel like some of these timeline ones specifically.
So YTD, MTD is year-to-date, month-to-date, right? So explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So that year-to-date and month-to-date, if you're looking at a report or things that have happened in a certain period of time, say we're in, for instance, right now we're in November and I want to look at my month to date. So basically that means from the beginning of the month to now. And it's not the whole month. It's just the beginning of the month to now. Or similarly, year to date. So it would be all of 2021 until today's date. It's not the entire 12 months.
Yep. Smart. And then MOM is not mom. It is mom. But in this instance, it's month over month. So explain this one too. Help me.
Yeah. So month over month, that's basically you're talking about your change from one month to the next month. And so your month over month growth rate might be low or high. So compared to, your growth from January to February is 10%. And from February to March is, I'm forgetting what order the months go in.
Time is a social
But
construct.
say from February to March, it's only 7%. It's like, well, your month over month growth has dropped this month. Why did that happen? So it just means from month to month, the change.
That's exactly right. And if you flip the letters upside down, it spells wow.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. Month over month is fun.
Wow.
That's a good little mnemonic device for you to remember that. Don't use that. That was bad. And then PTO. So this is now we're sliding into kind of more like people-focused HR stuff. PTO is paid time off, right? That's your vacation time.
Yep.
Does that often include your sick days too?
Yeah. So some people have PTO that is their paid time off is just like vacation days, and then their sick time is separate.
Okay.
Other people have their PTO all wrapped into one thing. I don't know. It just depends on your company, but PTO generally is vacation day.
Paid time off, vacation days. Yeah. FTE. So I actually didn't know this one until I looked at this blog post, but it's full-time employees. So your business might be structured where you have some contractors and then some salaried employees. And FTE generally refers to salaried full-time employees.
Yeah, I guess you could have PTE and FTE, part-time employee and full-time employee.
Yeah. POC. Point of contact. This one also stands for in social spheres, person of color. So for the longest time, when people would be like, this is your POC, I was like, that's really weird that they're pointing out that this is a person of color. It means point of contact. So if someone's saying hey, we're planning this event, this is Shannon Miller, she's going to be your POC for the event. That means that if you have any questions or if you're trying to get in touch with somebody about the event, you would reach out to your point of contact, your POC.
Your
Shannon
POC.
Miller. That's right. NDA.
A non-disclosure agreement. So a lot of times you'll have to sign an NDA. Sometimes if you at a place of business or sometimes say we've had people sign NDAs as part of the interview process, say where we wanted to get a little more in the weeds about some proprietary information, we would have them sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement that basically says you're going to keep all this to yourself. You're not going to tell anybody anything about it. Or sometimes you'll have contractors sign it if they're working on things with your business, but you want them to keep it secure.
It's sensitive internal information. Yeah. I always think of celebrities with their NDAs where they like make their friends and people sign NDAs when they hang out with them.
Right.
That's the level of fame I aspire to, is that to hang out with me. I'm like, you can't tell anyone my secrets.
I won't tell anyone that you only drink tea and not coffee.
I was also going to say my secrets are that like on a Saturday when we hang out, I'm like, let's lay on my couch and watch Harry Potter and take a nap. NDA, you can't tell anyone. Okay, SOW. Statement of work or scope of work. So this is what it sounds like, right? If you guys are creating a plan or if you're putting together a big project, you would have your scope of work, like how much work is actually gathered in the project. You can explain this better than I can. I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is really helpful for a lot of times. You'll hear SOW or you'll hear scope.
Yeah, scope.
I feel like it's and what they mean is basically an outline of all of the work that's going to happen for a particular project or goal. And sometimes you'll hear people say scope creep.
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, and that's when like we outlined what the project was going to look like, and now we have added to it and added to it and added to it, and it's grown. That's called scope creep. So when you talk about SOW, statement of work, scope of work, scope creep, like those are all kind of in the same family.
Yeah. I want to go ahead and say that SOWs, any kind of statement of work or scope of work is very important for clarity and expectations.
Yes.
So especially if you're a contractor, I feel like this is most often used with contractors. I know sometimes companies will have like PMs, project managers.
Because like if you work at a company, you may have like an SOW, but if you're working with an outside, somebody who's doing some work for you, particularly technical work, it is very, or even creative work, you know, like this is what's expected and here's all of the parameters that's going to happen. And it's really to protect
the contractor
and you. That's like, you have agreed to do this work and I agree that you're going to do this work, and anything outside of that is probably going to cost more.
Yeah. So exactly. So it's setting your expectations. It's setting expectations and clarifying project and work deliverables. Oftentimes I'm thinking in terms of creative work because that's how I used to do it. And that way, like for example, when I was a creative writer, when I was a copywriter, I would create SOWs. And that way, if the customer, the client was like, hey, actually, I wanted these 2 other blog posts written. I'd be like, well, in the SOW, I said 6 and this is 8. And so it's going to cost extra.
Right.
It's a way to protect yourself, because if you just say, hey, I'll write some blog posts for you, I'll write 6, and you don't have it written down anywhere, even if it's in an email, it's just easier to put it in an SOW.
Yeah. It's really helpful to have, even just if it's for your day job, to get some clarity from your boss. Like maybe they're saying, hey, go out and do this project. And you're like, all right, I'm going to write out a statement of work to kind of outline the project and the expectations on deadlines and the expectations on deliverables, and then get my boss to approve it. And that way, if they start throwing things at it, I can say, I can do that, but you need to understand that's outside of the scope of work that we agreed on. So I'm going to need more time or more help or whatever it might be.
Right. So this is just a useful acronym to know. And I'm glad that you brought up scope creep, because I remember the first time I heard that, I was like, what? And then I started using it all the time because I was like, everyone is scope creeping on
Scope
me.
creep.
That's not a good use of that word. Cut that out, Melvin. All right. SLA, service level agreement. Shannon, explain this to me.
So basically a service level agreement, it's an agreement between a service provider and a client. So for instance, I know that if I go to a drive-through, maybe this unwritten SLA is that they're going to get their food to me in, X amount of minutes, right? We have SLAs within our delivery team, right? So if you order something from our website within X amount of hours, we'll deliver it on this day, that kind of thing. We also have SLAs set up with our customer service team. So the idea is that we will get back to you within 2 hours. We're going to answer X% of phone calls. We're going to resolve issues within X amount of time. So that's kind of what that means. Sometimes they're kind of unwritten from the customer side of you. Sometimes people use it as a marketing tactic too. It's like, hey, get this in 5 minutes or your money back. We're like, hey, if you don't get your receipt, like you get a free meal.
Or like a Dairy Queen, when they don't flip the blizzard
if they don't flip
down,
it up, that's their service level agreement.
They didn't flip mine upside down the other day, and I didn't even say anything. So I guess I'm
everybody's
kind of
having a hard time right now.
I know, look at me.
But we have a lot of internal SLAs, like even like between our department and other departments, right? So if we submit like a problem to IT, they have an internal SLA that they'll resolve issues within X amount of time, right? So that's all that means.
SLA. TOS, Terms of Service. So this is like, we all know what Terms of Service are. Anytime you sign up for new software or you buy a new thing or you have to I don't know.
I like that what is written here. Terms of Service, the really long legal jargony text no one really reads, outlining the terms of service for a purchase, product, or agreement.
You can tell I wrote this blog post. Because it is. It's like the legalese nonsense that like when you sign up for like a new Netflix account, you scroll to the very bottom and you have to check like, I understand the terms of service, which basically says like, hey, this is what you're getting. This is what you're paying. We're going to use your information in this way is basically what tons of TOS, terms of service say now. So yeah, that's what TOS
a lot of times there's
for.
Terms of service for like if you buy tickets to go to a show and they're like, you have to agree to the terms of service. Nobody reads it. And then they're mad when they show up and they have to wear a mask inside. And it's like, well, it was in the terms of service.
Happened to me. So do you know that, I don't know if everyone listening would know about these, but I think so. They're getting popular. The immersive like artist exhibits, like Immersive Van Gogh, Immersive Monet. Yeah. So Immersive Van Gogh is coming to Nashville. Which is pretty close to us here in Huntsville. And so I bought tickets for February 2022 and I was so excited. And then I completely forgot about it. And I booked a trip the same weekend overseas, so I can't cancel it. And I was like, oh, well, I'll just get a refund. And I emailed them and I was like, may I please have my money back? And they were like, no. When you bought these, you clicked our terms of service that said no refunds.
Can you transfer them? Can I
gave them to Lizzie. Sorry.
So mean.
I whispered to her when I did it, I said, I like you better than Shannon. And then I kissed her on the cheek and I gave her the tickets.
I'm going to return your Christmas gift.
No, I bet it's really good. Okay. I got you really good. All right. Finance and sales acronyms. So AP and AR. Accounts payable and accounts receivable.
Yeah.
Blech.
Grace is looking at me like, please talk about this.
Explain this.
So accounts payable and accounts receivable. So this is how accounts, say a person in your business handles accounts payable and accounts receivable. So your accounts payable or your bills. Those are things that are payable. You can pay them. Your accounts receivable are things that people owe you, right? So that's how that works.
I like that one better than the first
Payable
one.
is money going out. Receivable is money going in. And then at bigger companies, you will have people specifically responsible for this person does AP, this person does AR.
Oh,
so I know like, for instance, my husband works at a government contractor and they have a larger department and they have different accountants responsible for different things. And it helps keep things nice and tight.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
P card, purchase card.
P card.
That's the company credit card used for making company related purchases. I have never heard anyone say P card.
Me either. Okay. You know what? That's not true. When I've worked at big places where you have to get like everything approved or whatever. And they're like, you have to sign out the P card and like sign it back in and sign your life away that, they'll hunt you down if you lose the card.
If you hear P, I believe you actually. If you hear P card, it means purchase card. It's basically the company credit card, right?
Yeah,
More or less. Okay. B2b and B2C. All right. B2B is business to business. B2C is business to customer. Shannon knows that I have a personal issue with this in our own company because like we use them strangely, but that's not really relevant to the podcast. So B2B is business to business. That's companies who like sell their goods and services directly to other businesses.
Exactly.
Right? Okay.
So B2C, and I'm also going to use, sometimes you'll hear D2C, which is direct to consumer.
Okay.
Or business to consumer. So that is where somebody sells something straight to a person. So if I go on Cheetos.com and I buy a bag of Cheetos.
What a weird example.
You know what? I'm pretty sure that you can do that. So it's not that weird.
Do you love
Thank
Cheetos?
you very much.
I've never seen you eat a Cheeto.
My kids eat a lot of Cheetos.
Okay.
But like, so, or I go on, whatever website or an independent brands a lot of times. So say I go on, what's a brand?
Hello, Hetty Joan.
Oh yeah, my old business. I'm closing it like this week.
Don't say that.
Anyway, so if I go on Cheetos.com, I buy a bag of Cheetos from Cheetos and they send me a bag of Cheetos. That is business to customer, direct to consumer.
Right.
If I go on Cheetos.com and order a wholesale and have a wholesale account and I'm going to sell Cheetos in my store, that is a B2B, business to business.
Gotcha.
And so a lot of times you'll hear B2B as like business to business services that I would say, or business to business raw goods. So for instance, the manufacturers we work with, that's a B2B arrangement. We're not the end consumer.
Right.
A B2C is when you're selling something directly to the end consumer from the business.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense.
That makes sense?
Wow, you're so good at this. AOV, average order value. That is exactly what it sounds like.
Yes.
So it's like for us, we do a lot of e-commerce. We do a lot of sales online, basically all of them. And it's the average order value that our customers place. So we can basically pull all of our data from our site in the back end and say like, what is the average order value of the orders placed through our site?
Exactly. So you can, it's a really helpful way of saying like, okay, right now, the average order value on our web, I'm just going to make up numbers. The average order value on our website is $25. So that means that the average of how much somebody spends in a single purchase is $25 and say maybe your goal is I'm going to make our average order value $30 next year, right? And so I'm going to try to make people spend more per order. It's a good way to kind of guess how much money you're going to make.
Yeah.
Like we know on average we make about 100 sales a month and everybody spends about an average of $25. You can kind of work out the math there.
That makes sense. I actually did not know this acronym either. I wrote this blog post and I feel like I've just blacked out. I don't remember any of these.
You did a great job.
Thank you so much. So let's move on to marketing acronyms where I am comfy and Shannon also lives. So we'll start with CPC. So cost per click. This one is, you explain this one because you'll do a better job.
So cost per click is a lot of time used in advertising, right? So if you go on Google and there's an ad, somebody clicks on that ad, those advertisers are paying per click. So they might pay, $1 or $5 or whatever per click. You'll see this on like Amazon. There's like sponsored products. Those are cost per click ads, which means instead of paying Amazon $1,000, I'm going to pay them a budget of, $1 per click or whatever it is, which
that's low.
I would love to know if there's $1 per click Amazon ad.
Allowed.
But, you can also, you'll see this anywhere that you see sponsored ads that you click on. Those are almost always cost per click. And it just means the advertiser is paying like an amount of money per click they get. Does that make sense?
It does. You're so smart. You're so good at explaining things. SEO. So this one is where I live or I used to live. It's search engine optimizations. This is essentially how to optimize your content or your site or your anything, whatever it is that lives online, optimizing it so it shows up high in search results. So obviously we usually deal with Google. Google's kind of like the god of search engines, but you can do this also for like Yahoo and Bing and I don't know, whatever else you use. And it's just kind of like playing the game more or less to get your content to show up first organically in Google. You can also pay for better SEO, but that's kind of sliding into CPC territory, cost per click territory. Talk about ROI, return on investment. This acronym is my nemesis. Talk about ROI, Shannon.
So ROI, return on investment. So that means this is used a lot of time in marketing, but in other areas as well. I'm going to invest X amount of money and I expect to get a return on my investment of, 5x or 1.2x or whatever, right? So if I put in $1 to the machine, the advertising machine, I think I'm going to get $100 back out of that advertising machine. That would be a very big ROI, right?
This is also a good acronym to know if you invest money or if you're in any kind of banking or investment, industry, or just you do it as like a hobbyist, but you've heard ROI before. QC, quality control. This one's, go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah. I mean, that's really just quality control is just testing and checking to make sure things are up to snuff, right? So this could be, sometimes big companies have whole departments that do this. We actually have a mutual friend, Patrick. He works in QC for a manufacturing company. And so that just means making sure everything is ship-shape as it should be.
I like that you use ship-shape.
Ship-shape.
KPI, key performance indicators. So Shannon, you made KPIs a part of my life last year, and I have forgiven you since. But
Did
tell
you
me
love
about
it?
Nope. Tell me about what KPIs are.
So I actually didn't know what this word meant for a long time until I got more in the marketing side of things. So KPI, key performance indicators. KPIs are basically a metric. And so for instance, we work in marketing. We have all kinds of metrics. We have social media click through, we have views, we have open rates, we have all different kinds of things. A KPI, a key performance indicator, means I have picked the ones that are the most important and I'm going to be judged for how well I'm doing my job based on those metrics. So a KPI for you, might be, okay, I wrote a blog post and I know by X date, I want to get this many views, right? And your key performance indicator would be the amount of traffic you're getting.
Yep. Or if you're on social, if you manage social media, easier ones are followers, follow counts, like counts. So you're like, okay, I've chosen that. I want to grow my followers to $10,000. What? 10,000 followers by the end of the year. That's my KPIs followers. So
it's key metrics, because we all have a billion metrics we could be tracking. And these are the ones we basically decided are the most indicative of reaching our goals.
Yep. And your KPI can be anything depending on what industry you're in.
Yeah, we just know a lot about marketing.
That's pretty much all I know about. CTA, so that's call to action. So again, we're still in marketing, and call to action is that's kind of the text or the messaging that you have at the end of your blog post or your social media post or your email newsletter that tells your readers what they should do next, right? So maybe your call to action is like, click here to sign up for a mailing list, or maybe it's click here to buy this product, or maybe it's click here to, learn more. Right. So essentially it's what you are trying to get them to do do with this piece of content that you've put out in the world. You're saying now, here's the next step.
Right. And it's a really good idea, just a little hot tip, to have one CTA per marketing piece, right?
Yes.
So for instance, if I have a flyer I've given to the sales team, I don't want to have 17 things that's like, call us and order now and use this coupon and
visit our website and sign up for
and do
email.
here. You want one.
Yeah. One thing, or else people will do nothing. All right, let's go into software and technology. Now I am leaving familiar waters and going into very unfamiliar waters. So we'll start with OS. So this one's pretty straightforward. We've all heard about it. I think the most, I always relate it to iOS. It means operating system. And iOS, if you have an iPhone, whenever your phone updates, it is updating the operating system, which is the internal software, right? Essentially, that helps run all of your programs and apps and all the things that you need to do. So every computer and phone and tablet has an OS on it.
So if you're on Windows or on Macs
that's
or Linux or whatever it is.
Linux. Ooh, you're so savvy. My ex-husband used to use Linux all the time. It had a little penguin on it. And he gave me his old laptop and it ran on Linux. And I was like, I don't know what any of this is.
Somebody
figured it out.
Yeah, somebody handed down my son a laptop with Linux and we were like, yeah, that's not going to work. Thank you.
It was rough. All right, SaaS. So also this is usually said as SaaS, I've heard. But again, more commonly it is written. OS, I think people say a lot. SaaS is usually just written out, but it's software as a service. Yeah. So, so many.
My biggest familiarity with SaaS is with website platforms. So like e-commerce store platforms. So if you want to open a store online, you're probably not going to custom build a site on your own. You're probably going to use a software as a service. So Shopify or, what are other ones that people use? I'm blanking now. Square.
Yeah.
Like
all kinds of other ones.
Oh my gosh, what's
so many
wrong
other
with
ones.
me?
Look, 2 is enough.
I know a lot about this and now I'm dying on the vine. Anyway,
doing great.
So basically it's the idea that you're paying to use this software. The software is the product, but it's a service that you get to use.
Yeah, like blogging platforms or other ones like WordPress, Wix, anything that the product is the software.
Wix,
so software as a service.
That's what I meant to
Wix?
say.
Yeah. All right, UX, UI. So this is user experience, user interface. Shannon, this is totally in your wheelhouse.
So this is something our creative manager just does a lot with. So UX, UI has a lot to do with how a user is interacting with your website, for instance, or an app, or anything that is like a digital interface that a customer is interacting with. So user experience and user interface are often used interchangeably. I think UX is a little more like, how does it look? How does it feel? And UI is a little more like, how do you interact with it?
Sure.
But they're used so interchangeably. It's like, how does your website look? What kind of actions do you want those people to take? And how are you going to design a web interface or an app interface or whatever that's going to get them to do what you want them to do?
Yeah. If you hear UX and UI a lot and you get confused, just remember the key thing there is user, right? It's about the user. It's about the person who's actually using the website, the people who are clicking around and looking at it and using it. So that's kind of what that's about. And then API, this is application program interface. I have literally never used this acronym once in my life.
Really?
Yeah, never. So Shannon, again, feel free to speak.
I'm going to be honest. APIs are a little bit of a mystery to me, but I learned a lot about them when we were doing a big redevelopment of all of our business systems this year. So we had an ERP we were implementing, which is an enterprise something. What is it?
Oh, I don't know. I'll Google it while you're talking.
No, but basically, we're using if you were going to use something to manage all your business process, a lot of time accounting programs, are run through an ERP. I'm doing a terrible job.
No, you're not. You're not doing a terrible job.
Anyway, but we had to figure out how to get that software system to connect to that's what it is. Enterprise resource planning. Yeah. It's all of your business information housed in a piece of software.
Yes. So I'm going to read the technical definition of ERP. Enterprise resource planning is the integrated management of main business processes, often in real time and mediated by software and technology. Wow, I feel smarter.
So for instance, our ERP that we implemented, we went from using a simple accounting software to a very robust ERP that handles accounting and inventory and sales data and all of that in one place. But we had to figure out how to connect that software system to other software systems, and they talk to each other via APIs. So an API is basically digital connections between two different systems.
I fell asleep.
I hate it.
While you were talking.
I feel like I did a bad job.
No, you didn't.
If our IT people listen to this, they'll be like, that's not it at all. It's basically how you connect softwares to talk to each other.
Hey.
Or different websites or whatever.
I have good news. Our IT people do not listen to this. So you're fine.
Hey, if you're listening to this and you work in our IT department, I want you to come call us out.
Let me know and I'll give you a treat.
Ooh.
A prize.
Is it going to be a
knuckle sandwich? I'm just kidding. It's not.
You can't threaten people at work.
Whatever. Take it up with the director of culture. That's me. I was going to tell you one more thing. I like that you use the word robust. Whenever anybody talks about ERP, they always say like, oh, it's a robust ERP. It's robust. And I love the word robust. It has really good mouthfeel. Robust. Say it.
Robust.
Doesn't that feel nice in your mouth?
I love it.
Robust. Also, whenever anybody says robust, I just think about these Olive Garden commercials that used to come on when I was in high school.
Like robust tomato sauce?
Yes, it would be like a robust, zesty tomato sauce. And I always think about how zesty and robust our ERP is.
So
like,
zesty.
Ooh, Italiano. Anyway, so I hope you guys are all much smarter now after listening to Shannon and I explain acronyms. If you're not, I don't want to hear it because my ego is fragile this week. Hey, stay with us because our guest Blair is coming on. Blair is our sales guy, one of our sales guys. And he has a very charming Southern accent.
I love him.
And B, he's going to tell us some of his experiences with acronyms. It'll be really entertaining.
This will be fun.
It'll be fun. See you soon. The Standard Office Procedures podcast is presented by Blue Summit Supplies. We're an online office supply store that puts you at the forefront of our focus by offering new career-building resources every single week. Sign up for our newsletter and visit our blog at bluesummitsupplies.com for free downloads, tools, and tips to make your job easier and more fun. All right, guys, so we are back, and I have a very special guest today. I kind of teased him before the break there. His name is Blair. I'm going to get your official title wrong, Blair, but he's our sales guy, one of our sales guys. And I'm really excited to have you on the show because I want everyone to hear your voice.
Well, thank you. I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So, Blair, what is your official title?
It is Business Sales Executive.
Business Sales Executive. So I thought you would be a perfect guest for the podcast because Blair is one of the most personable people that I've met.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I think when I think sales, I think a lot of us have this preconceived notion of kind of sleazy and like car dealership salesman, you know? And I think one reason that we love you for sales at this company is that you kind of embody the genuineness of our culture and you're just a very easygoing guy to listen to and get along with. So am I embarrassing you on the podcast?
Maybe a little bit. You're building me up. So
I know. I want to sell you. But anyway, so just to give some context why I think you'd be a great guest. So today we're talking about acronyms, right? And just kind of in general business jargon. So a minute ago, Shannon and I were talking about, we kind of explained a lot of acronyms and defined a lot of terms so that people who are maybe newer to their career or just sort of the professional world in general would have some context. So Blair, can you tell us about some times where you wished you'd had something defined or you had some hiccups with those things?
Yeah, most definitely. So right out of school, when I was hired with my first job, actually, I had one of my managers come to me within the week on the job. And he said, hey, I need this by EOB. I'm like, thinking to myself, EOB. I'm like, okay, boss, I'll have it to you. Because I was a little intimidated. I didn't really want to ask him.
Yeah.
They didn't teach me what EOB was in school. So, of course, I go back. I hit Google. I'm like, oh, okay, end of business. Why didn't he just tell me end of day? That would have been so much easier. But, that's kind of a few times I've been one of the instances where I've kind of ran into that business acronym where it kind of felt very intimidating. I didn't know how to speak up, especially on the very first few weeks of the job.
Yeah.
So that could be a little stressful.
That reminds me of, did you watch The Office?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So
big Office fan.
I feel like most of us are. Do you remember the episode where Idris Elba's character, I can't remember his name, Charles, I think, Charles something, comes in and asks Jim for the rundown? He's like, hey, can you give me that rundown? And Jim's like, the rundown. I'll get you that rundown. And he's trying to frantically figure out, he's like, oh, I'm sorry, what was that rundown you wanted? And he's like, just the rundown. Give me the rundown on my desk by the end of the day. And Jim is like, okay. And he has no idea what a rundown is. I feel like we've all had our rundown moments. And that EOB for you, it was like your rundown moment where you're like, yeah, definitely, boss. I'll have that to you by EOB. And you're going to Google.
Great example. Yes, most definitely.
I feel like The Office is a wealth of good comparison examples.
Oh, I love The Office.
Yeah. What else do you have?
Well, just yesterday, it's funny that you asked me to be on this podcast because we were meeting with product team and we're going over a few different sheets. Mm-hmm. And then Patrick comes up and he's going over this document and it says ACD. And I'm like, ACD, that's a new one for me.
Yeah.
Now I've been in sales for 5 to 6 years. I know B2b, ROI, KPI, stuff like that. But ACD, that's a new one for me.
Mm-hmm.
So with the environment that we have here at Blue Summit, I wasn't like, okay, let me just wait and hit Google. With us, we were very welcoming and open, transparent. So I was like, okay, man. I was like, what's ACD up here? What's that mean? He's like, Advanced Carton Direct. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense now, because we're just trying to review this, and we have that atmosphere where we can do that. But I know in probably certain businesses where some people are afraid to speak up, they don't want to be intimidated or embarrassed. But, I say at times, it's fine to be able to do that in an environment like this.
Yeah,
like
I think you're totally right. And I'm glad that you brought up that example, because that's one thing that Shannon and I kind of touched on is you brought up a few key points there with that story, which is interdepartmental acronyms, right? Like Advanced Carton, what was it?
Advanced Carton Direct. I had to write it down because I didn't remember.
To me, like I'm not in product, you're not in product. That means nothing to me. And only product team people would really know what that means. Like, I don't think that's a common enough acronym to where, it wasn't in our blog post. I don't think that's one that people use frequently unless you're in specifically like product-based or ordering kind of positions. And so that's an instance where I'm going to pick on Patrick here for a minute. But if you are leading a meeting where you're speaking with people outside of your department and you use acronyms like ACD, or for me, I've used SEO before. I think it was actually in a meeting with you.
It was.
Yeah.
And I had that one. I was going to bring it up because I didn't know SEO, but of course I felt comfortable enough, and you're like, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but you explained it to me, and now I know what it means. Yeah,
and I think that's a great example, because I pride myself in being pretty considerate of other people generally, especially when I'm speaking and communicating. But in that instance, I think you were brand new to the team. We were having a meeting, and I said SEO a couple of times because, again, kind of like Patrick talking about ACD, SEO is such a common term in marketing that everybody knows what it means. But that's only in my little marketing bubble. And outside of marketing, you have no reason to know what SEO means, Like, it's not reflective on you of an ignorance on your part because you don't know what ACD is or SEO means. And that is incumbent upon the person who's leading the meeting with people outside of their department to predefine these terms if necessary, or just avoid using them altogether. So I think that's kind of like a good rule of thumb.
Exactly. Yes, I like that.
I feel like I would have not been able to resist asking if he had dropped a C from ACDC. Did you like that one?
I do.
Thank you. That was for free. That was
too
good.
Joke. That's too good.
I
Grace.
know. I wish I could think of an AC/DC song off the top of my head. I would sing it. The other thing that stuck out to me about your kind of anecdote right there was that you felt comfortable enough to say, hey, what does that mean? And so I like the difference between the first story and the second story, where EOB, you were like, yeah, sure, I've got that for you. And you had to do some Googling. And then the second story, you were like, I'm just going to go ahead and nip this in the bud and ask. And Shannon kind of touched on that earlier in the episode where she said, just ask, because oftentimes, sometimes people won't even know what the acronyms mean themselves.
Yes.
And if that's the case, they shouldn't be using them in the first place, first of all. And second of all, I don't think, if you are in an environment where you asking questions reflects poorly upon you, that's not a reflection on you or your ignorance. That's a reflection on the culture itself. That's not a great culture if they don't encourage you to ask questions and to learn and grow. Because everybody, I think of the Adventure Time quote. Have you ever watched Adventure Time?
I have not.
You don't have children, Blair, so I guess you wouldn't.
I'm missing out.
You need to let your dog watch it. But anyway, there's a quote where one of the characters says, the first step to being good at something is sucking at something. And I always think about that, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to embarrass myself right now and ask maybe, this question, I don't know what this means. Can you explain it to me? And in the moment, I might feel embarrassed. But then later, I'm like, wow, I'm so smart, and I have this wealth of knowledge now that I've accumulated over the years by looking dumb. So
you have the humility to be able to do that, and others who may not have in the same room with you, you're actually able to educate, and they're able to learn from that too, who don't want to speak up.
Yeah, 100%. I think I had a teacher once in elementary school, and I asked a question, and somebody, some other kid in the class was like, yeah, obviously, didn't you know that? And she was like, if somebody asks a question, there's a good chance that 2 or 3 other people in the room have the same question. So think of the person asking the question. You might be doing the class a favor and not even know it, right? And obviously class/your meeting, but if you have a question about if you're wondering what ACD means and you're in a meeting with a bunch of other people who also aren't in product, there's a very good chance that you're not the only person in the room who's like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And you could secretly take notes in your notebook and make a point to ask it later, or you could do everyone a favor and just ask it yourself right then.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Well, Blair, thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, hey, thanks for having me. Hopefully everyone been able to enjoy, my voice, my accent, So
can you say something very Southern, like
do I have to try?
Bless your heart.
Is that a good one?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Bless your heart.
You got another one for me? You got a better one?
Everybody may nah.
Are you gonna go football? I was
Roll
worried.
Tide.
Oh, that was
and I'm not even. I'm not even an Alabama fan.
It's too late. Down in history.
You have to say it that way. Roll Tide.
You got to say it with a W and a Y. All right, Blair. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And guys, we will be back next week for more hot tips. This has been a Blue Summit Supplies production. Good job, Larry.